What if I told you that a significant portion of the weight that you've been carrying, that stress, the anxiety, the heartache, is completely optional? That you have the power to put it down, not by solving all your problems, but by understanding a very profound single distinction. Stay with me because today we're going to be exploring this freedom together. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. I'm very glad that you can be here with me today. Welcome, especially to those of you who are live with us today. Hello, Irish in Cyprus. Nice to see you here, love. Hello, Mariette in South Africa, sunny South Africa. Hello, Mary Moore. Nice to have you here. And everyone else who's joining us live, welcome home to your heart. If you are new here, my name is Gabriel Gonsalves, and this is our weekly dedicated space to tune in, connect, and open our hearts, and ultimately create an expanded field of unconditional love in which we can then reclaim our true essence. And if this is your first time, or if you've been here for a while but haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. It really helps us grow our heart center community and allow more people to discover us. Also, your comments and shares throughout our time together are always very, very appreciated. Welcome, Amanda, who's joining us right now. Also, Cindy's Heart. Hello, hello. Nice to have you here. So, what are we diving into today? Well, we're going to be talking about one of the most liberating distinctions that you can make, the difference between the unavoidable pain of life and the unnecessary suffering that we create on top of it. I want to share a very personal story that some of you guys, if you've been here for a while, you may already be familiar with it. And we're going to unpack the different ways in which we add suffering to the pain. We make the problem worse. Then I'm going to take a moment to answer some of the most common questions that I get on this topic. And then at the end or the second half of our time together, I'll take us through a guided meditation that I'm going to call diving or resting in the sanctuary of your heart. I'll be leading it here live today, and it's designed to help you release that heavy load of extra suffering that you've been carrying in your heart around a particular area or problem or issue that's keeping you from really experiencing true freedom and in an inner sense of peace. Welcome, Mary Rinaldi. Nice to have you here. Geraldine Kelly from Ireland. Thank you very much for making your way here today. All right. So I want to begin by sharing that the information that I'm going to be sharing with you, or the extra tips, they come from an article that I published this week on my blog. So if you subscribe to my weekly newsletter, The Feeling Heart, you may already be familiar with some of the things that I'm going to share. And then if this feels like it's something new or a topic that you want to explore and dive in a little bit deeper, then my recommendation is that you visit my website, specifically the blog section, and then read the deep dive on this topic. So let me begin by making this very real to you. My sister passed away about 9 years ago. She died of multiple myeloma, the same type of cancer that my mother died of nearly, 14 years ago. And at that time, I was living in South Africa. And during that time, it coincided with me not being able to travel outside of South Africa because being Venezuelan, the Venezuelan consulate in Cape Town could not issue me a passport. This is a problem that many Venezuelans have. The amount of bureaucracy that happens just makes it nearly impossible if you're overseas to get a new passport. So anyway, as a result of not having a passport, I could not attend her funeral. And then in addition to that, I couldn't even get a visa. Obviously, without a passport, you cannot get a visa. And so the grief that tore through me wasn't something that I manufactured with my own negative thoughts. Okay, it was just the raw, unavoidable pain that came with the loss of my sister the kind that comes with having a human heart that feels very deeply, that has been in a relationship with a person pretty much all your life, in a world where nothing lasts forever. And so this is real, legitimate pain. Okay. It wasn't inflicted. It wasn't caused by my thinking. Okay. It's just a normal suffering that happens as a result of just being human and being alive. Okay. But then here's what came next. After my sister was buried, and I went through the process of really sitting with my grief and applying everything that I know about surrendering and processing my grief, I continued to hold on to my sister's death with a grip that really turned into something much darker. I would replay every moment that I had failed her, and I would torture myself with a whole bunch of what if only, if only I would have applied for my visa sooner, if I had not moved to South Africa, if I had maintained a deeper connection with her. Okay, and constantly punishing myself in so many ways, and by thinking about all the different ways in which I could have maybe even preventing her from dying, or to have been there for her. Okay, constantly beating myself up for not having a valid passport, for not being a good brother, etc., 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 and that additional layer of torment. Well, that wasn't the original pain from just losing my sister. I created that. I added that on top of it. Can you relate to this? Do you have a situation in your life where there is the pain of what happened, but then all the additional pain that you added onto it? Well, a Harvard study found that our minds wander 47% of our waking hours. That means that out of every hour that you spend, about 50% of the time, you're actually not present. Your thoughts are just kind of wandering, doing their own thing. Okay. But then this is what the study found, which I think it's even mind boggling, that 95% of our moment to moment unhappiness, which is our suffering, is caused by these thoughts that wander 0.5% of the time. In other words, we're not being present with what is. Instead, we get lost in catastrophic fantasies about what might be, or agonizing over what was. Okay, or just simply reacting or responding to things that happened a long, long time ago. So I may be having a conversation on the phone with a friend, and then I might get distracted because my daughter is saying goodbye to me and everything, and then I just hear part of the conversation, but then my wandering mind misses that, and then when I come back to the conversation, I associate it to something else that was said a year ago, and then I start creating all this unnecessary suffering in my mind about the whole thing. Has this ever happened to you? All right. So again, and so if you can relate to what I'm sharing here right now, what I want to do now is I want to share some of the key takeaways, and the I think are the most important ideas from my articles to, in essence, help you reduce the amount of suffering that we ourselves add on top to what is already and can be defined or described as a very painful life experience. So, I want to begin by sharing with you a very common old Buddhist saying that says, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Earlier this week on my here the community feed, or I think it's called the community post section within my YouTube channel, I post a true and false question, which I've been doing, if you notice, a couple times every week. And the question was, we are responsible for all the pain that we create, true or false? And interesting enough, the majority of people said true. And the majority of people um, that I ask the question here in my everyday lives say false. So I found myself like, okay, most people in YouTube say truth. People I talk to here in my everyday life say false. So I decided to ask that same question to the participants of my heart mastery circle. And so the same thing happened. Half the people say truth and half the people say false. And then I asked the second question. The question was, well, if you believe that it is false, that the majority of it is not, then what percentage would you say then is the extra suffering that you create? And then again, the group was highly divided. Some people believe that we create most of it. Some people believe that we create less. And I think it has to do with the fact that there is a misconception. We are looking at different dimensions of life. Okay. There is two types of pain. There's a pain that life delivers. Okay. Suffering is instead the ongoing story that we tell ourselves about that pain and the many ways in which we perpetuate it through our resistance, our judgments, our refusal to let go. Okay, there's a profound difference between the raw pain of life, as I was describing in the example with when my sister passed away and my response to that. And then there is the additional suffering that we layer on top of our stories of resistance. And so, though it is true that from the highest spiritual perspective of the enlightened masters, all suffering is created by the mind's attachment to a thought, an idea, a person, the world, materiality, etc. Okay. From the human perspective, we cannot say the same because we humans are grown or designed and built for connection. We are designed for relying on each other and for building deep, deep, deep connections with other humans because for centuries our survival depended on that. So it would not be fair to say that from a human perspective, we create all that suffering because it's not true. But what we do create is this additional layer of suffering by sometimes even avoiding the initial pain by holding on to some kind of a positionality or idea in our heads or a story about that suffering. And then in doing that, what we're doing is we're not allowing ourselves to actually experience the pain and instead hold on to some kind of a story. So let me ask you a question. As you've been listening, if you could gently put down one story that you've been holding about a particular struggle that you're having in your life at this moment, that you know deep down is creating unnecessary suffering, what would that be? What would be that story that you begin to let go of? So for example, there is the difficulty of being an entrepreneur and deciding to start your own business, your own practice, and then obviously diving into the unknown and the pain of or the pain and the fear of insecurity and uncertainty. All right. But then there's all the story that you tell yourself about this thing that, oh my God, look how much I'm struggling and it's got to be this way. And I got to really struggle because if it's not struggling, I'm not going to value it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So is there a particular situation in your life at this moment where you are not just experiencing some kind of a pain, but perpetuating the pain by the story that you keep telling yourself about that pain? Or perhaps you're going through a breakup, and rather than just being with the actual pain of the breakup and the sadness and the grief, you keep telling the story of look what they did to me, I'm a victim, if only this is on, if only I would have done this, then they would not have left me, then this we would not have had that argument, then this thing would not have happened, etc. That's the first key idea. And so again, we amplify then this idea or this suffering this pain unnecessarily through different and very predictable patterns. And my website, in my blog of this week, I go quite deeply into each one of these. One of them is fear of others' opinions. All right. This is when, for example, again, when you make a decision of doing something, following your heart, let's say moving to another country or quitting your job. And then on top of that, you also are afraid of what other people are going to say or think about you. All right. So imagine that there is the pain, the suffering of, oh my gosh, I'm leaving my job, moving into the unknown, and I feel scared. All right. There's some pain associated with that. Living the people behind that I used to work with whom I had a strong connection, and then diving into this. But on top of that, I adding the unnecessary pain of like, oh wow, what are my parents going to say? What will people think of me if I tell them I'm going to do this? This is something that I experienced, for example, when I made the decision many years ago to become an actor, and then I left. I decided not to use my degree in business that I got from Texas A&M University and become an actor instead. And there was a pain and the uncertainty of doing something I had never done before. And then on top of that, there was all these additional suffering. Oh my God, what is going to happen when my mom finds out and I tell her that I decided to follow this different path, etc. So then there is stubbornness and rigidity of our thinking. Sometimes we just become very stubborn about things have to be our way, or we hold on to pride. And this is this idea of like we'd rather be right than happy. Yeah, we're just to hold on to a perspective of you have to apologize to me, and until you apologize to me, I'm not going to let this go, and therefore, then I perpetuate the suffering. Something that happened a long time ago, because I keep holding on to the story that for me to let go of this suffering and this pain, this person first has to apologize. Sometimes it's just simply ignorance or our own projection, and what I mean by that is we're not even aware that we're doing this, or there is impatience or just forcing things, trying to make things happen. And ultimately, the what is referred to as the hidden payoff, or the juice that you get from extra suffering, from suffering unnecessarily. And what I mean by that is, all suffering brings with it some kind of a payoff. All emotions do. And so when you look at your own suffering in your life, a good question to ask yourself is, well, how is this suffering helping me? Oftentimes we have this saying that goes, misery loves company. And so when you feel victimized by somebody else, you feel like somebody else wronged you, but you continue to tell the story of how somebody cheated on you, lied to you, mistreated you, whatever, betrayed you, dishonored you, you get somebody else's sympathy, you get somebody else's compassion. And so you get used to being with that suffering because it buys you other people's attention, sympathy, validation. Okay. And so in what ways are you doing that? And so a good question that begins to the process of dissolving this unnecessary suffering is thinking about in which area or your life are you carrying this unnecessary suffering, the one that you are creating for yourself. And can you then identify one of these patterns being played out? Are you suffering because you're afraid of what other people would think? Are you suffering because you're just kind of like stuck in pride that it's got to be your way, or that your perspective is the only valid one? Okay. Is it because you're attached to a specific outcome, to how things should have been, and just cannot let go of the idea that maybe what happened was just what was actually meant to be? Is it because you're just simply not aware, or you might be projecting your own guilt or shame onto something? Is it because you're trying to force your way or your beliefs upon somebody else? Or is it just because deep down there's some hidden payoff that you're getting from this? The next point, the next idea is about taking back control. And the way to do this is by interrupting the pattern. Okay. And the key is ultimately recognizing and naming the pattern. And this is the first step that begins to dissolve it. In other words, the moment you become aware that you are in certain areas, situations in your life, you're creating additional unnecessary suffering. That moment, the possibility to begin to dissolve that suffering, to surrender it, to let it go, becomes possible just by the mere fact that you became aware of it. And this is in quantum physics referred to as the Heisenberg principle, which means the consciousness of the observer actually changes the behavior of the atom. And so think of the atom as a situation. The moment you begin to see your situation from a slightly different perspective, but just observe it, at that moment, the possibility for the perspective shifting begins to become available. So now that you recognize the pattern, and this is the question, can you just observe it? What would it feel like to simply name the pattern without trying to fix it? All right. So, for example, I recently had a conversation with a friend um, in which we became quite polarized about a particular topic where we just see two completely different perspectives. All right. And I could continue to hold on to my perspective, hoping that the person then adopts or sees my perspectives and finally says, "You're right." But that will probably never happen. And it's okay. And so arriving at that point where I could say, you know what, it just makes no sense to holding on to my perspective, because at the end of the day, it's just one perspective. Okay. And so is that point where I can just simply say my own ego's response or need to constantly be right, etc. And then just simply say, you know what? Well, I don't have all the answers. And so I'd rather just be happy than be right. Okay. Yes, my perspective is valid. The other person's perspective is also valid. And they're both being seen from different, heads, different stories, different positionalities, and they're both valid, from their perspective. And so it is at that moment where I began to recognize it and observe it, where it by itself begins to shift, begins to change. And so I want you to think of that we can do this work, and this is in many ways psychological work, but equally we need to be able to do the emotional work. And this is where your heart comes into place. All right. The invitation is to begin to look at your heart as that shelter, that place that can hold both the pain and the compassion that ultimately dissolves that suffering. And so the question then that I want to invite you to consider is, can you love yourself enough to start letting go of all the unnecessary pain that you have created in your life? Begin to slowly just peel off all these layers, little bit at a time. And are you ready to meet yourself with the same compassion that you so easily extend to others? Because here's the thing, what I notice about the majority of people like you and me who are heart centered, who are love and compassion driven. And that for most of us, it becomes easier to extend love and compassion and forgiveness to other people. But when it comes to ourselves, not so much. And this is why these topics, the past few weeks that we've been exploring of self forgiveness, self compassion, releasing unnecessary pain, they're all interrelated, and they're very important, because ultimately, all self forgiveness, or all forgiveness, I should say, is self forgiveness. Okay. And so forgiveness should really begin at home. Compassion should really begin at home. And so, why is that? Well, because ultimately we cannot give to others what we don't have. So, the invitation is to engage in a series of practices or regular practices where you are moving more and more and more into the energy of unconditional love and compassion within your heart, and learning how to extend that to yourself, to liberate yourself. And in the measure in which you become much more accepting and kind to yourself, in the measure in which you begin to see the subtle ways in which you're creating unnecessary suffering in your own life, it becomes easier then to extend that same kind of compassion to other people. And you can also observe how other people around you are unnecessarily creating creating a additional suffering in their life. And so, if you are interested in this topic of how to build an even more compassionate awareness for yourself, I want to extend to you the invitation to join the Heart Mastery Circle. A couple of you guys who are here today are part of that circle. This is an intimate transformational circle where we explore how to live fully and authentically from the heart. We have weekly live sessions every Tuesdays at, let me see, they are at 12 noon US Eastern Time. You get access to my series of foundational courses on living from the heart, emotional self mastery, manifesting from the heart. And obviously, you get to have access, direct access to me, where you get to learn and develop a new series of tools and practices that will support you as you navigate life challenges. All right. So to sum it up in this topic, before we dive into today's meditation, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Suffering is the ongoing story that we tell ourselves about our pain. And the many ways in which, by holding on to that perspective, to that positionality, we perpetuate that pain. So, the question as we dive into today's guided meditation is, are you willing to shine the light of awareness on the many ways in which you are creating this additional suffering in your life? And if you are you willing now to move now into a more receptive space where you can allow your heart to connect to the infinite loving and compassionate heart of the creator, so that you can then offer the same kind of love and compassion that the creator would offer you and is ongoingly offering you, so that through love and compassion you can dissolve all this unnecessary pain and suffering. Let go of the need to be right, let go of the pride, let go of the fear, let go of all the additional stories you keep telling yourself about why you're not successful, why you don't have love, why, etc. And just surrender all of that so that you can live more from a much more loving, authentic space. So, this is the invitation that I'd like to extend to you as we dive into today's guided meditation. So, I want to invite you now to switch channels and now move into the awareness of the here and the now as we dive together into the depth of the sacred heart, into that sanctuary of our hearts. Let us begin. Begin by taking a few deep inhales into the heart. Breathing in on 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhaling 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Continuing on your own, allowing this natural rhythm to slowly emerge without forcing it. Breathing into the heart, slow, deep, and evenly. Knowing that right here and right now, this is a dedicated time to nurture yourself and to connect with the vastness of the infinite love that lives within you. Breathing in slow, deep, fully. Breathing out. Establishing a nice, gentle rhythm as you begin to give yourself permission to fully relax. Letting go of unnecessary tension around the head, the neck, the shoulders. Letting go of any tightness around the stomach or the pelvic area. Letting each breath guide you into a deeper space of relaxation and ease. Feeling gratitude and appreciation for this breath. Feeling gratitude and appreciation for the heartbeat that gives you life. Welcoming emotions as they rise. Allowing your mind to wander while you maintain your focus on your heart. Breathing nice and slow and deep into the heart. Dropping more and more into the vast awareness that resides within you. Now take a moment to think about a particular situation in your life that is bringing up pain or emotional discomfort. It could be a particular relationship. It could be with regards to a particular situation, with regards to work, money, finances, a problem for which it appears there is no solution. It could also be something related to your physical health. And just connect with that pain. with the suffering. And for the next few moments, as you continue to breathe in and out of the heart, just become aware, not just of the pain and the feelings associated with this situation, but also the sensations in the body and the story in your mind that you keep telling yourself about this situation. We're not trying to change the situation. We're not trying to fix it. All we're doing is just bringing the light of awareness to the feelings that come up, to the sensations in the body, to the thoughts and stories your mind creates. And now, please set the intention to become available to the love and compassion that can dissolve or melt away all pain and suffering. By simply declaring, I am now available to the energy of divine love. I now welcome divine compassion. I'm now willing to let this suffering go. Now imagine that within your heart there is a rose that begins to open petal by petal. A rose that radiates unconditional love and kindness. With each petal that opens up, the light of compassion begins to shine through. God's love being received and flowing through your sacred heart. Let this light shine. With each breath, This flower within opens more and more until you see yourself fully surrounded by compassion. Compassion opens you to divine grace. Divine grace that heals everything, that lightens your load, that softens the heart. And from this place, I want you to declare either inwardly or silently or outwardly, I am receptive to divine grace. I am receptive to divine compassion. I am receptive to divine healing. And I am willing to let this suffering go. For the next few moments, just be present in your heart, offering yourself the self that suffers, the self that creates stories, the self that has pride, that needs to control, that is afraid what others would say, the self that gets some kind of a payoff by suffering. Offer it this compassion. We're not trying to make anything happen. We're not trying to force the healing. We're just simply letting divine grace do what divine grace does. Divine grace heals. Divine grace loves. Divine grace transmutes and transforms. Let divine grace within you dissolve all unnecessary suffering and pain. Remembering that your sacred heart can hold it all. Joy and pain. By virtue of our intention, we are creating an expanded field of divine love and compassion. And as the field of love and compassion that radiates outward from your heart continues to expand, imagine it flows out to your family and your friends. People in your life that are also creating unnecessary pain in their lives, either by their own habits, their own stubbornness or pride, or just simply ignorance. Let your compassionate heart expand out to them too. Imagine this field expanding even farther out to begin to cover now the entire city or town where you live, expanding even beyond to the country, the region, until you see it fully surrounding the entire planet, going out to those areas where we are creating unnecessary suffering, or people are suffering unnecessarily due to others' ignorance or stubbornness. Letting the divine grace of the Creator flow through you, easing the suffering of all sentient beings upon the earth. Remembering the Bodhisattva vow of the ascended masters that says, may all sentient beings be suffering and sickness. May all sentient beings rest in the light. Let the light of your heart expand outward, allowing and welcoming a softer heart, surrendering all stories, resting in the sanctuary of your sacred heart. Take a moment now to anchor this new awareness by declaring, I am now becoming aware of all unnecessary suffering I'm creating in my life. I now choose to let go of the suffering. It's time to stop punishing myself. I recognize that pain is a natural part of life, but holding on to that pain is not. I deserve love and peace. The more I let go of the need to suffer, the lighter I feel. So I choose to let go of this unnecessary suffering in the many ways which I am creating it. Choosing love, peace, and harmony. Letting compassion guide me on this journey. Remaining receptive to divine grace. As we bring our time together to a close, set the intention to continue to offer yourself this compassion, this grace, maintaining a strong connection between your heart and the heart of God. Knowing that there is assistance if we call upon it. And at the moment we tell ourselves, I am receptive to divine grace can help me let go of all the unnecessary suffering in my life. At that moment, we're creating the conditions so that then suffering can be lifted. The awareness of how you're creating it can then lead you to stop creating more unnecessary suffering in your life. And as a result, you are becoming a vehicle for divine compassion and divine grace to flow through you. Take a deep inhale into the heart. Letting out a gentle once again, deep inhale. Last time, deep inhale into the heart. And welcome back. Remember that the goal isn't having a life without pain. Pain is an inevitable part of life. But it's about freeing ourselves from all the unnecessary suffering that we create by the stories we keep telling ourselves about that pain. There's great freedom when you move into this sacred space within your heart and welcome or become receptive to the energy of compassion and divine grace. That's when the true miracle and the healing really begins to take place. Oh my goodness, time has really gone by very quickly. I haven't had a chance to check your comments yet since we began this process. Um, Isabel says, I'm healing the parts of me that once trusted blindly. I honor my growth and let go with grace. Thank you, Isabel. Lassie says, I think I spent most of my young life being self centered, and now I'm trying to do so much for others as redemption. Yes, I can totally relate to that. I have a close friend that um, who shared with me something very similar recently. Mary Moore, she says, thank you, Gabrielle, for this most beautiful meditation, letting go and surrendering with divine grace. Irish says, letting go of what was my life in Cyprus and embracing the very different life now. Yes, I can totally relate to that. You know, I I think it took me possibly about nearly like 3 years to also fully let go and surrender of the life that I had in South Africa, even while I was still here. So I can totally relate to what you're saying. Um, okay, so my beautiful, wonderful friends, we've come to the end of our time together. Oh, there was one last message also. Um, from Irish says this was so relaxant to the work I've been doing and what on myself this past few weeks. Thank you, Gabs, for your wisdom. You're very wisdom. You're very grateful. Uh, Amanda said this meditation was beautiful. Thank you, Gabriel. You're very very welcome. All right, my beautiful friends. Um, Once again, I'm really very grateful and thankful for you being here today. Um, I want to remind you once again that if you're ready to experience deeper transformation, um, I'd like to invite you to join our Sacred Heart Meditation Circle. This is where we do this deep work together in a supportive community every single week. It's where we move from understanding to also embodying these teachings, these new awarenesses. And I would love to support you on that journey. That's it for this week's Heartstream. So, wherever you are in the world, please take care of yourself and so that you can take care of others. Until the next time, please receive my love from my heart. Until then, oh, I'm seeing a whole bunch of messages that are coming in right now. We just want to say goodbye. I'll have a read after we close. I need to wrap up. So, anyways, I was just rejoicing in this feeling of divine goodness. Yeah, once I move into this heart space, sometimes it's very very hard to let go. So, anyways, as I was saying, wherever you are in the world, please take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. And as always, I send you all of my love from my heart to yours. I look forward to seeing you again this coming Sunday. Till then, bye bye.